You crawled out of your bed like a zombie. Your room was dark, probably one of the darkest rooms inside the digital circus. Honestly, it had taken weeks of convincing, but Kane finally caved, and he despawned the powerful lamps on your ceiling. The good thing was that the darkness allowed you to sleep, deeply and peacefully. But due to the digital circus being the digital circus, sleeping was exhausting. It was like a reverse. Being awake filled you with energy. Sleeping drained it. Probably a sort of failsafe to ensure everyone is not just sleeping all day. Either way, you were beat. Yet overslept, of course. But that was a given for you. You slipped from under your sheets down on the floor, slowly making your way to your dresser. You finally got up on your feet. Your clothes were a cruel joke. There were all these flowy, thin white summer dresses that revealed the silhouette of your slender figure when lights were shining behind you. It was embarrassing to walk around in these. You took out your straw sun hat and sunglasses as well, pushing them as far back as you could. You then stepped towards your door, mentally preparing yourself for the light. Your hand took hold of the knob, twisting it open. As expected, the lights were overbearing, even with the sunglasses, but you were somewhat used to that. Leaning to your right, you picked up your parcel. The thing was adorable, made out of black shiny wood with a colorful leaf pattern. Probably your favorite digital circus possession. The only problem was the fact that it was more than a simple accessory. You needed it, genuinely. As you stepped outside, finally ready to embrace the day, you were almost run over by Pomni. The jester girl just barely managed to stop in her tracks. Whoa, 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 whoa. You raised your left hand as your right one was holding the parcel. What's wrong? The adventure's about to start. My alarm didn't go off. Pomni usually was 10 minutes early at the stage area, mostly looking for an exit and to hype herself up. Out of all the characters in the digital circus, she was the only one still looking for an exit. You yourself had reached a sort of nirvana here. You accepted this new reality. And while you didn't remember anything from your past life, you did have the foreboding feeling that everything here was better than there, so might as well not even bother. In the digital circus, you had become something you hated, mostly because you were experiencing it daily now. You were a vampire, with sickly grey skin, white hair, and blood-red eyes that glowed in the dark. Thankfully, whenever you closed your eyes, set lights turned off, allowing you to sleep. You had 4 razor-sharp fangs in your mouth, a long, slender tongue, and pointy ears. And even though your skin looked sickly and grey, it was incredibly smooth, almost like your body had been carved out of super expensive marble. It was understandable then that light hurt you. That's what the parcel and the sunglasses were for. They allowed you to walk among the others during the day, without a mind-splitting headache due to visual overload. Your name in this world was Betty, as a pun of the name Betty and a bat. It was terrible, but at least you were something substantial. You probably would have a much harder time accepting your reality if you had become something as abstract and weird-looking as Zubul. After you calm Pomni down by petting her head and reassuring her that the adventure hasn't started yet, as the theme song of the digital circus had just started playing, the theme song being more or less played right into everyone's head, waking up even the most tired of characters. So, everything was still fine. Or well, as fine as things got in the digital circus. Entering the stage area, the others were already waiting.
Betty, Pomni, fashionably late I see, joked Jax,
as he watched you approach. Kane was floating on top of the stage, seemingly frozen in an exaggerated pose.
Ah, there you are! I'm so glad everyone is here now!
Kane snapped his fingers.
I was wondering and worried that you'd be missing out on this one.
Kane made a little happy dance in the air before spreading out his arms.
As I was saying, today's adventure is the migration of the floating head people,
said Kinger out loud. And a silence followed.
Well, yes, Kinger.
Kane was audibly disappointed.
How did you know? It's every 2 years on this day specifically, Kane, he stuttered. And it's one of my favorites.
Even though Kinger didn't have a mouth, you could hear his smile, which was kinda precious.
Well,
Kane inhaled loudly.
Exactly, today's adventure, as Kinger so eloquently put, is our 3rd migration of the Floating Head People adventure. Allow me to explain. The Floating Head People are exotic creatures who migrate from east to west. It's a beautiful and rare event in the digital circus, and so
we get the day off, interrupted Kinger.
Kinger, please. You ruined this for me.
Oh, sorry, Kane. Kane coughed.
You don't get the day off. Rather, you have to observe the migration outside. That's it, yeah. Kinger, please never do this again.
The chess piece grabbed his own head.
I'm so sorry, Kane.
It was about an hour later. You and the others were outside of the digital circus's tent, spread out on 3 different picnic cloths, with a basket full of snacks on each. A little bored, you were lying on your back, like the others, yet your parcel stuck into the ground to give you shade. I wish I had something to read, you complained, making Pomni giggle. The Jester and Jax were both lying next to you, though the bunny man was already snoring, so he couldn't really participate in any discussions. You'd be sleeping too if it wasn't so bright. Even with your sunglasses, you could feel it. It was truly a terrible time for you.
What do you think they look like?
Asked Pomni cautiously. She was a little afraid. You looked at her. Well, I imagine they look like human heads with big wings for ears. The Jester shuddered. And you? You asked casually.
I don't know, that's the problem.
She sighed.
I just don't know anymore.
You raised an eyebrow. Seemed like she was still trying to make sense of the circus. How sad. And not in a pathetic way, but more a I feel sorry for you kind of way. That made your heart sink a little.
Hot dogs, anyone?
asked Gangle as she reached into the basket of her blanket. She was lying with Zubul on the picnic set in the middle. It's all just hot dogs, by the way. Pomni's gaze shifted to you. A bead of sweat ran down your forehead.
Have you still not eaten anything?
We don't feel hunger. I don't see the point. Pomni blinked in response.
It's really helping me and the others to not abstract. I'm just worried about you.
You exhaled through your mouth. Pomni, what does the digital food taste like for you?
Well, it tastes like the food it depicts, just practically missing all of the spices, including salt.
You looked at her. Well, for obvious reasons, everything just tastes like mud for me. Using a finger, you pushed up your upper lip to reveal one of your fangs. Pomni blushed, thinking what she said next may be racist.
Have you tried blood yet?
You blinked, crossing your arms, offended. No, the thought disgusts me. Pomni gulped. That did mean you did think about it.
Do you not want to try it?
You shook your head. How am I supposed to get blood here?
Right.
As Pomni looked back at the sky, her eyes turned super small out of pure fear. From the canopy of the surrounding trees, a massive head was just barely peeking down at your group. Everyone except for Kinger and the sleeping Jax screamed in terror. The head was gigantic, looking like the head of a bald, middle-aged man. Its eyes were almost completely white, save for one black pinprick at the center of each eyeball. After it curiously stared at you and the others, it looked up and floated upwards. The giant floating head people were, in fact, just giant floating heads. Except that they didn't have a tiny body or anything. It genuinely was just a blimp-sized head, with a mouth, functioning eyes, and what you would call a sorrowful expression. The thing is, if it hadn't been for this curious one, the others would have seemed small in comparison. An entire swarm now floated silently above your group. They were so high up in the sky, they were roughly the size of a hawk, you'd guess, but as the curious one floated up, he very soon turned into the same size as the others. Pomni slapped her hands on her face and screamed in terror. Concerned, you looked at Jax, who was turning in his sleep. You really wanted to avoid him playing some pranks on her as revenge. So you just gingerly placed your hand on Pomni's mouth. She was the only one still screaming. Shh, 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 shh. You tried your best to calm her down, but she just kept overreacting. Fearing she'd abstract out of sheer terror, you had an idea.
Pomni, let's get back inside. You don't have to look at them anymore.
You pulled her up, ignoring the burning sun on your back, as you forced her to look at the floor. Pushing her forward, up the path back into the tent. The whole walk you could feel the piercing gazes of the floating head people, and it was honestly difficult not to turn around and throw a few profanities at them for frightening Pomni so much. Gently you nudged her into the tent. The main stage area just one hallway away. By now, Pomni was nearly emotionless. She stopped screaming, thankfully, but she felt incredibly humiliated, as the only one unable to withstand the eldritch horror of the heads. You looked at her. You could feel the vibrant heat coming from her. You could hear her breathing. And you could hear her heart. It was racing as it pumped the blood all throughout her body, almost unrhythmically too. You gulped loudly. Well, it's not like you never thought about it. You were a vampire. Vampires drink blood. But there were always the others around. You couldn't really single anyone out. And you didn't have the heart to just attack a sleeping character, not to mention that doors were locked at all times. But now, hearing Pomni's heart beat, it was like listening to the sizzling of a beautiful steak in a pan. Salvia was overflowing in your mouth. As you kept walking forward, Pomni next to you. Their steps slowly lost momentum. And after a while, you stopped entirely. The jester had already reached the play area as she turned around.
Betty?
She asked weakly, her voice hoarse from the screaming. You swallowed a large blob of spittle.
Yeah?
You stuttered.
Thank you for getting me out of that.
Oh, sweet, sweet Pomni, you thought, as you walked forward towards her. Sweet, sweet, innocent Pomni. Carelessly she turned around, unaware of the danger you posed. Taking one step forward, and almost instantly you were behind her. Your lips pulled back, revealing your fangs, the cool air of the circus dancing across your teeth. Without warning, you pounced on top of the jester, throwing her to the ground.
Betty!
She screamed in terror and surprise.
I'm sorry, Pomni!
You barked. Without as much as a second thought, your head came down on the jester's neck. Pomni screamed in pain as your sharp digits penetrated her pale skin. Digital blood flowing out of the wound and into your mouth. It tasted sweet. So sweet. You sucked and slurped as Pomni helplessly squirmed beneath you. You had pushed a finger into her mouth to stop her from screaming. Her blood was so hot. It filled your entire body with warmth that was only comparable to a lover's touch. But the more you sucked, the more your brain began to function again. This was still Pomni under you, your friend, and she was terrified of her life. But yet, you couldn't let go. You didn't have the mental strength to stop the vice grip of your teeth.
I'm feeling lightheaded,
cried Pomni. After feeling your tongue swipe over the wound one last time, you managed to release yourself from her. Your mouth was covered in her blood. Your eyes were twitching insanely. But so was also Pomni's entire body. The jester didn't know what to say, neither did you. Disgusted with yourself, you stepped away. Your hands pressed on your mouth as you fought the urge to lick your lips. A simple sorry just wouldn't do it. Tears now ran down your cheeks as you placed a hand on her back, which made her shiver even more. It hurt you. It hurt your heart so much. And so you retreated your hand. The only thing you could think of was running, as cowardly as it was. You hid inside your room, thoroughly locking it. In the fetal position, you lied there on the ground, mentally preparing yourself to be confronted by the others. The day had started so acceptable. This was a nightmare. A nightmare out of which you wanted to wake up from. Your right eye twitched as your body began to glitch out just a little bit, too terrified of the repercussions of your actions. There was nothing you could do. You spent hours just lying there, not even realizing the time spent, when someone knocked on your door. You squeaked like a dog toy. Another knock, and another. You forced yourself on your feet. With slumped shoulders, you walked over to it and opened your door. There stood Pomni. Your eyes twitched hungrily. Though as she looked up at your face, she gulped. Black liquid had been coming out of your eyes for a while now, and you didn't even notice. With her right hand, she made a wiping motion. You blinked. After a minute of Pomni getting anxious, you realized what she meant. You grabbed a handkerchief from a nearby cupboard, wiping over your face before returning to the door frame.
Hi,
she said. You didn't respond. Tapping her fingers together, Pomni looked up at you.
I just, I wanted you to know something.
She tried her best to not stutter, which made her talk a little slow.
I'm not mad you bit me,
she said, and you gasped.
What?
There was so much disbelief in your voice, it made the jester girl shudder.
I'm not mad that you bit me. I am mad, though, that you didn't ask. Ask?
You hushed.
If you had told me you wanted to bite me, I would have said yes.
Your right eye twitched at the wave of emotions you were feeling.
And maybe this way you could have, contained yourself a little, made it more comfortable for me, instead of suppressing it until it burst out.
What? What was she getting at? Lewd thoughts suddenly flooded your mind as you blushed hard.
Are you still hungry?
Perplexed, you took a step aside, hesitating for only a moment. But then, Pomni walked forward, into the darkness of your sleeping quarter. You closed the door behind her, and you took a look at her. standing in the middle of your room, her face showing just how unsure she was, your fingers hovering over your keys. Pomni didn't protest when you clicked the lock shut. Stepping towards Pomni, the jester, she couldn't see anything in the darkness, while you could. Your shaking hands grabbed her by the hip, pulling her closer, hugging her, softly like a lover, before gently carrying her to your bed, where you placed her down. Her hands were on her side. She was vaguely staring up into the two glowing orbs that were your eyes. It was the only thing the jester could see. Your hands now moved up her body in a sensual way, making Pomni groan. Your touches were gentle, seductive. With the thumb of your right hand, you brushed circles into her chest. You could see her blush, her almost needy facial expression. With your other hand, you swiped your long white hair back before lowering your face. You kissed her on the lips, a quiet, wet smack echoing in your ears. A sweet, lewd sound that made both of yours and Pomni's toes curl in delight. Closing her eyes, Pomni was the first to push her tongue forward. It touched your lips before you allowed it passage. Pomni's small tongue rubbed over your sharp fangs for only a moment before your own long, slender organ softly touched hers. Pomni was too afraid to move, but that was okay. With your free hand, you slowly unzipped her costume. Pomni's breathing got faster as more and more of her naked skin was exposed to you. She shivered at your cold room. With a long string of salvia connecting your mouths, you leaned up, your lips turning into a wide grin that revealed your teeth, a frightening visage. You were glad she wasn't seeing you like this. She'd probably scream in terror, ruining the mood. Pomni's heart was racing, but this time it was out of excitement, not fear or anxiety. Even the smell of her body was completely different too. You couldn't get enough of it. Instead of her neck, you went for her exposed shoulder, chomping down on it like a crocodile. Pomni screamed in pain and surprise, but she didn't resist. She let it happen this time. The tongue that had just seconds ago been playing with hers was now lapping up thick globs of red digital jester blood. Pomni's knees quivered in excitement, and as you were sucking, gulping, and slurping the sweet, sweet nectar of Pomni's insides, your hands went down her chest sensually, your nails scraping against her skin. Pomni's eyes widened in pure ecstasy as your fingers found their goal.
Thank you to the people who are supporting me on Ko-fi. You guys are keeping me alive.